Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner and today is August 7th, 2019. In just a moment, we're going to be on to your public aviation and marine forecasts. Now, you can always get our information by dialing our 800 number, that 800-472-0391. And you can also go to our website by just typing in weather.gov/Alaska on the internet and just click around the areas of your choice. Most of the maps are clickable, and don't forget the tabs above and along the sides of the maps because there's so much information out there for you to use. If you ever have any questions or comments, feel free to email our TV lead at david.snider@noaa.gov for further information. Now let's go on to the important topics of the day. We do have across the northern side of the Alaska Range here. This is the coloration for our watches. This watch is out for flooding, for streams, and also rivers along the Alaska Range. We're going to see this continue through the overnight hours into Thursday morning, expecting stream rises to cause possible mudslides and also rock slides. So be on the lookout for this as we head through the overnight hours, and also stream rises are going to be a little bit higher through the next several days as they continue to see some rain along that northern part of the Alaska Range, north and west, pretty much from Denali Park stretching down towards Rainy Pass locations. Now, looking at the fire danger, this is increasing across the Copper River and also along the Copper River Basin and the Susitna valleys. Look for increased fire danger all the way down to the northern Kenai, and this is due to the drying conditions. We don't have any fire weather watches out at this time, but we certainly are going to be warmer than normal with no rain across the south and also a little bit gustier wind conditions, warmer conditions across the southeast expected as we head into Thursday. So moving on to the weather pattern, the satellite maps, putting this into motion, you can see that the moisture is streaming down mainly across the northern and central interior areas of the state. What we have mainly out there controlling our weather for the southern tier of the state is a ridge of high pressure that's centered just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula. So a little bit of a counterclockwise circulation here, and then out further to the west near the western Aleutians, putting this into motion, counterclockwise around a low pressure system that's lifting there to the north. So this system is kind of diminishing at this point, but you can see it in the upper level low system as that system is traveling further to the north. Now at the surface, it's really losing the troughing for the western areas of the Bering. So the ridge that's just centered to the south of the Alaska Peninsula is beginning to take control of the eastern Bering, and we're seeing foggy conditions associated with this ridge. However, subsidence drying, which is a drier air mass that kind of works its way down to the surface, has dried out the atmosphere, brings some clearer conditions for much of the Gulf waters and across the southern interior. Some clouds there across the interior with the afternoon showers that developed today. Now low pressure across the southeast is really a weak development just starting, and that's just moving towards the eastern areas of the Gulf. To the north, just weak pressure in control here, but the main focus will be the low pressure to the northwest, which is going to be bringing a colder air mass to the northwestern Brooks Range as we head into the overnight hours. Looking for some light rain showers along this system. Late tonight with the moisture and the heating across just along the eastern Brooks Range and south, we may see a possible thunderstorm out there. Otherwise, just evening showers tapering off late night And the low pressure system out across the southeast, that'll be a very weak system, possible shower towards Ketchikan and south towards the Dixon entrance with some development of fog possible. Across the southwest, look for very weak conditions, a little bit of a gustier north flow beginning to come out of the mountains there in the Aleutian Range. Otherwise, very quiet for the Bering with clouds and fog setting up into the pattern tomorrow. This is not going to change across the Bering locations. Main focus for rain will be around the low pressure system dropping towards the south, and we'll see the eastern areas of the state under some light showers. However, the northern panhandle there will be clearing out with some gustier north flow, especially through the Lynn Canal. Small craft advisories expected out in that location. So Friday, looking for possible thunderstorms along the interior down towards the Talkeetna Range. Otherwise, dry conditions prevail across the state with above normal temperatures, and we'll get to your temperature map in just a minute. And here's that ridge hanging on through Friday, so foggy conditions and clouds are going to continue. And then we have a front as we head into the latter part of the day, which is going to bring some very gusty southerly winds as that pushes another weather front through towards the central Aleutians. Now looking at your temperature maps for tonight, very mild temperatures on tap statewide with 40s to the north and then 50s to the south and 50s across the Bering. Looking at temperatures overnight, these temperatures are going to be coolest across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, where they saw temperatures down to 35 degrees today, and across the southeast, temperatures will only drop into the mid to upper 50s. And then for your highs on Thursday, very similar to today, a little bit warmer, possibly across the south in the upper 70s. The southeast will also see temperatures in the mid to upper 70s, a little bit cooler to the north with the low dropping through, and then across the western areas of the state in the 60s to lower 70s. For the Bering locations, look for temperatures climbing up into the 60s, a little bit lower out there to the west, 50, where that front's coming through on Friday. Not much changes on Friday morning temperatures, with temperatures statewide ranging in the 40s and 50s, perhaps a little bit cooler there up at the eastern Beaufort Seacoast once again. And then for the southeast, looking at temperature ranges still in the mid 50s. So very similar pattern all.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now moving on to flying weather. Tomorrow looks like we'll see some widespread MVFR to start the day on Thursday, with some IFR conditions across the eastern areas of the Gulf and also along the north and west coast. Looking at the Bering locations, we will see widespread MVFR and IFR to start the day, especially the southwest coast and the Alaska Peninsula. As we head into the afternoon hours, expect most of the clearing to occur across the mainland locations, and we'll see the western areas of the Gulf clear up pretty nicely to VFR conditions. IFR hanging out there across the Bering and along the northern tier of the state, with IFR conditions also expected just along the eastern waters there. However, most of the southeast panhandle will be breaking out into VFR conditions during the afternoon, as well as much of the southern tier of the state. Look for afternoon thunderstorms there just south of the Brooks Range. As we head into your Friday morning, we'll expect a return of those MVFR conditions for most of the interior for the morning hours on Friday. Looking at better improved conditions Friday across the panhandle locations, still seeing some MVFR and IFR conditions hanging out across the Gulf. Looking at the north and west coast, we'll see widespread IFR to start your day Friday, along with the Bering staying in that IFR pattern with MVFR elsewhere across the Bering. For your afternoon, same conditions across the west coast, MVFR to IFR conditions widespread for the Bering. Clearing across the state for Friday afternoon with afternoon thunderstorms here along the Talkeetna Mountains. For the southeast, looking at a very nice afternoon as well for you on Friday afternoon, and improvement across the eastern areas of the Gulf. Looking at the passes in more depth, Anaktuvik will see IFR tomorrow morning, improving to MVFR by Thursday afternoon. For Adigan, same pattern there, IFR to MVFR late day. And we'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass go from MVFR to VFR. For Rainy Pass, MVFR to VFR, and then Windy Pass will see those same trends, MVFR to VFR. And we'll see MVFR to VFR for Isabel, and Mentasta will also go MVFR to VFR in the afternoon. Tenita will start off as MVFR, improving to VFR, and Portage will be a VFR day for you on Thursday. For Chilkoot and White Pass, we'll see similar MVFR to VFR conditions. And then let's look at our freezing levels for tomorrow morning. The surface freezing level is still off the north coast there, and then climbing heights from 6,000 to 10,000 feet across the state from east to west, hitting 12,000 feet across the Gulf and the southwest. And then we'll see conditions between 10 and 12,000 feet across the Bering, with the Gulf ranging from 12 to 14,000 feet. Let's take a look at the icing for tomorrow. Main concerns are across the northern tier of the state below 8,000 feet. Look for some light icing for those locations. Now for Thursday, the jet stream, mainly an amplified ridging pattern across the Bering with low pressure across the eastern Pacific there. We do have a jet max across the northern tier of the state at 60 knots. And then for your 9,000 foot winds, we're going to see very much the same pattern with ridging, bringing southerly flow across the western areas of the Bering. Let me move out of your way. So you can see the strongest jet here is out of the southwest, 25 to 40 knots. Elsewhere across the state, a northerly flow between 10 and 25 knots, strongest along the Brooks Range locations, a little bit breezier to the south as well across the Aleutian Range, 10 to 15 knots really there, and fairly light conditions across the Panhandle and Gulf between 5 to 15 knots. At the 3,000 foot wind height, we're looking at a very similar pattern. Strongest speeds will be through the passes along that northerly flow along the state, and then across the northern tier of the state. We do have some wind direction changes there from the north and inland along the west coast there. We will see some westerly flow at 20 knots. Around the southeast, low pressure, a little bit of a wind direction change around a low near the Dixon entrance, and here's your strongest speeds to the west there between 10 to 25 knots. To sum this all up, we're looking at turbulence mainly across the northern tier of the state below 4,000 feet along the Aleutian Range and out there towards the Bering. So this is mainly for speed turbulence, not worried about any locations across the southeast. So looks good for the southeast for Thursday.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. It was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact, the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to to get boats, larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures. And in one sense, marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and obviously a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity, activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
All right, we're on to the last portion of the show where we're going to talk about your marines. Let's start out with the sea ice. As you can see, the ice edge is quite a distance away from the coastal areas, and what we're going to see through the next few days is mainly just melting in place, no moving or shifting around of ice at this point. And now we're going to take a look at the southeast forecast for tomorrow, Thursday, looking at winds out of the north primarily through the channels and an offshore pattern between 10 to 20 knots with the highest winds. To the north there, small craft advisory up in the Lynn Canal. And then we'll see seas on this day between 2 to 3 feet across the inner waters and then 6 to 7 feet across the offshores or outer waters. And then on Friday, looking for that offshore northerly flow, possibly a few gusts up there towards the Lynn Canal. Winds will be fairly light on that day, between 10 to 15 knots, like I said. Basically, seas on this day will be between 2 to 5 feet. Higher seas across the outer waters there. Now looking at your Thursday forecast across the northern Gulf and western Gulf waters, looking at an offshore pattern here as well with small crafted advisories along the southern Cook Inlet and the western Gulf out of the northwest direction. And then we'll see seas across the Cook Inlet ranging between 3 to 4 feet, little higher seas there towards the St. Augustine and Amatui Island at 8 feet. And then we'll see primarily 5 to 11 foot seas across the Gulf waters with the lower seas out there towards the northern Gulf. Prince William Sound will be at 3 feet for Thursday, and then on Friday, lighter wind speeds are expected. Primarily offshore flow direction continues with seas between 3 to 4 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula on Thursday, a northwesterly flow, 15 to 25 knots, stronger winds there near Kodiak Island. Seas on this day will be between 2 to 8 feet, the higher seas across the Pacific side. Now heading into your Friday, a continuation of that 15 to 20 knot winds, a little bit lighter wind speeds there near Kodiak, and seas on this day will be between 3 to 4 feet. For the Aleutians on Thursday, looking at seas and winds out of the south direction with lighter winds towards the eastern Aleutians, and we'll see seas on this day between 3 to 7 feet primarily. Let me move out of your way for Shimia, that easterly flow out towards Shimia at 20 knots as well. For your Friday, look for a front coming in from the west, increasing the pressure gradient, so we're going to see small crafts out here for your Friday. And for the eastern Aleutians, still keeping a lighter wind speed with seas between 3 to 6 feet. And then for the western Aleutians, higher seas out there between 8 to 9 feet on Friday. Now for the West Coast locations, looking at a westerly flow primarily 10 to 15 knots. Seas on this day 2 to 3 feet, so mild conditions on Thursday and Friday, just a wind directional change along the West Coast, 10 to 15 knots for winds and 2 to 5 foot seas, higher seas out towards the central waters there. And then for your north and west coast, looking at winds primarily from the east becoming more of a southwest direction towards Kotzebue Sound and south there across the strait. And seas on this day will be between 3 to 5 feet. For your Friday, expect lighter speeds across the coastal locations with change of wind directions once again becoming more southerly for Kotzebue Sound and south. And seas on this day again will be between 2 to 4 feet. Now just to recap your forecast for tonight, anywhere you might see thunderstorms primarily on the southeastern part of the Brooks Range. Across the rest of the state, mainly dry conditions with a few afternoon showers across the Alaska Range. Foggy conditions for the west coast and into the eastern Bering, and possible light rain or fog across the extreme southeast part of the panhandle there, and then just clouds across the eastern areas of the waters as we head into tomorrow. Look for a very similar pattern, except a cold front dropping down across the Brooks Range brings some light rain and showers there for the day tomorrow. Looking at a ridge staying in control across much of the Bering as we head into Friday. We will see the next front move into the western Aleutians, bring some gusty flow. Otherwise, dry conditions with afternoon showers across the mountains, across the interior with possible thunderstorms in these locations as well, and warmer conditions through the end of the week.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.
I remember as a kid, my mom would find little radios and engines and stuff at garage sales that was already broke, and she'd bring it home and I would take it all apart just to see how it worked. I never thought that I was going to pursue it as a career. I thought it was just going to be a hobby for me. And I decided to come back to school. I got my associates in automotive technology. Right after I graduated, I